Welcome back to Chrono Tales, where the impossible becomes inevitable and legends walk among us. I'm your host, and tonight's tale will make you question what lurks in the shadows above. This is the story of the Mothman'S warning. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. December 1966, a town about to face its darkest hour, warned by something that should not exist. But our story begins 1 year earlier, with a man who thought he knew the difference between reality and nightmare. Marcus Chen was a photographer for the Charleston Daily Mail, specializing in what his editor called human interest stories, a polite way of saying he covered everything too strange for the serious reporters. At 32, Marcus had seen his share of oddities: UFO sightings, ghost stories, local legends. He approached each assignment with healthy skepticism and a keen eye for the truth behind the tales. It was November 15th, 1965, when Marcus received a call that would change his life forever. A farmer outside Point Pleasant claimed something had been killing his livestock, something that wasn't quite animal, wasn't quite human.
Marcus, I need you to drive out to the McClintock Wildlife Management Area. Some farmer named Eugene Peters says something's been slaughtering his cattle, probably just a bear. But the locals are spooked.
What makes this different from the usual predator attacks?
Peters says whatever did this, it watched him. Says it had red eyes the size of dinner plates and stood 8 feet tall.
Marcus packed his camera gear and drove the winding roads toward Point Pleasant. The McClintock Wildlife Management Area was a sprawling expanse of abandoned military bunkers from World War II, now reclaimed by forest and shadow. As he pulled up to Eugene Peters's farm, Marcus noticed something immediately: the silence. No birds sang, no insects buzzed. Even the wind seemed to whisper more quietly here, as if nature itself was holding its breath.
You, the reporter?
Photographer, actually. Marcus Chen, Charleston Daily Mail. I understand you've had some unusual predator activity?
Predator. That's one word for it. Come on, I'll show you what's left of my cattle.
What Marcus saw in that field defied explanation. 3 cattle lay dead, but they hadn't been eaten. Instead, they appeared to have been drained. Their eyes were gone, removed with surgical precision. Their bodies were unmarked except for 2 small puncture wounds on their necks.
Mr. Peters, have you contacted the veterinarian? This looks like it could be some kind of disease.
Disease doesn't have red eyes and wings, son. Disease doesn't stand on 2 legs and watch you from the tree line.
Marcus photographed the scene, but his camera seemed to malfunction. The images came out blurred, distorted, as if something was interfering with the electronic components. As the sun began to set, Eugene Peters grew increasingly agitated.
We need to get inside. Now, it comes out when the sun goes down.
Mr. Peters, I'd like to stay and observe. If there really is an unknown predator, I need to document it.
Document it? Boy, you don't document the devil. You run from it.
Against Eugene's protests, Marcus set up his camera equipment in the barn, positioning himself with a clear view of the field. He had motion sensors, infrared photography equipment, and enough determination to solve this mystery once and for all. At 11:47 p.m., Marcus's motion detector began to beep. Something was moving in the field, something large. He peered through his camera lens, adjusting the focus, when he saw it. Standing at the edge of the tree line was a creature that belonged in no taxonomy textbook. It stood nearly 8 feet tall on powerful legs, its body covered in dark, mottled fur or feathers. But it was the eyes that froze Marcus's blood. 2 red orbs that seemed to glow with their own inner fire, reflecting the camera's flash like mirrors. The creature's head turned toward the barn, toward Marcus, and he realized with growing horror that it knew exactly where he was. It raised what could only be described as wings, massive leathery appendages that stretched 15 feet from tip to tip. The sound that emerged from the creature's throat was like nothing Marcus had ever heard. It was part eagle's cry, part human scream, and part something else entirely. Something that spoke of ancient hungers and forgotten terrors. Marcus fumbled for his equipment, but his hands were shaking so badly he could barely operate the camera. The creature was walking toward the barn, each step deliberate and predatory. In the infrared viewfinder, Marcus could see heat signatures that made no sense. The creature's body temperature was nearly 20 degrees higher than any known mammal. Suddenly, the creature launched itself into the air, its massive wings beating with the force of a helicopter. Marcus watched in terror as it circled the barn once, twice, then landed on the roof directly above him. For 30 minutes, Marcus sat in absolute silence, listening to the creature move across the roof. Occasionally, he would hear scratching sounds, as if it were testing the strength of the wooden beams. Then, as suddenly as it had arrived, the sounds stopped. Marcus waited until sunrise before leaving the barn. When he developed his photographs, he found that most were ruined by electromagnetic interference. But one image survived, a blurred but unmistakable silhouette of something that should not exist. Marcus's article about the creature ran in the Charleston Daily Mail 3 days later, buried on page 7 with the headline, "Mysterious Predator Stalks Point Pleasant Area." The response was immediate and overwhelming. The newspaper's phone lines were flooded with calls from readers who had seen similar creatures throughout the Ohio Valley. A factory worker claimed something with red eyes had paced his car for 5 miles on Route 62. A housewife reported a winged figure perched on her television antenna. A group of teenagers swore they had seen the creature near the old TNT plant.
Marcus, I need you to follow up on these sightings. Whatever you photographed out there, it's got the whole region spooked.
Bob, I'm not sure we should be encouraging this. People are scared enough as it is.
Scared sells newspapers, son, and if there really is some unknown species out there, we need to document it.
Over the next month, Marcus investigated 17 separate sightings. Each witness described the same creature: tall, humanoid, with glowing red eyes and massive wings. But there was something else. Something that none of them mentioned in their initial reports, but revealed under careful questioning.
Just before I saw it, I had this feeling like something terrible was about to happen.
It was like the creature was trying to tell me something, warning me.
I had nightmares for weeks after. Dreams about bridges falling down, people screaming.
The nightmares were remarkably consistent. Witnesses reported dreams of disasters, specifically dreams of the Silver Bridge that connected Point Pleasant to Ohio, collapsing during rush hour traffic. Marcus began to suspect that the creature wasn't just a predator. It was something far more complex, far more terrifying.
Marcus Chen, Daily Mail.
Mr. Chan, my name is Linda Morgan. I live in Point Pleasant, and I need to tell you something about that creature you wrote about.
What kind of something, Mrs. Morgan?
It visited me 3 nights ago. It was standing in my backyard, just watching my house. And Mr. Chan, it spoke to me.
Linda Morgan was a school teacher, 43 years old, with no history of mental illness or substance abuse. She was exactly the kind of credible witness Marcus had been hoping to find.
I was getting ready for bed when I heard this scratching sound at my bedroom window. When I looked out, it was there, that creature from your photograph. But bigger. Much bigger.
What did it do?
It looked right at me with those red eyes, and I heard a voice in my head. Not like hearing with my ears, like thoughts that weren't my own. It said, the bridge will fall. Many will die. Unless they listen.
Marcus met with Linda Morgan that evening at a diner in Point Pleasant. She was visibly shaken, but her story never wavered. As they talked, Marcus noticed something troubling. Other diners kept glancing at Linda with expressions of fear and hostility.
You're that woman who's been spreading stories about monsters, aren't you?
I'm not spreading stories. I'm telling the truth.
Truth? You're scaring people half to death with your nonsense about bridges falling down.
After the man left, Linda turned to Marcus with tears in her eyes.
They think I'm crazy. Maybe I am. But what if I'm not? What if that creature really is trying to warn us about something?
Linda, has anyone else reported similar communications?
More than you might think. There's a group of us, people who've had encounters. We meet every Tuesday at the Presbyterian Church. You should come.
The following Tuesday, Marcus attended what Linda Morgan called a support group, but what felt more like a war council. 15 people sat in a circle in the church basement, each sharing their encounters with the creature that locals were now calling the Mothman.
It stood outside my daughter's bedroom window for 3 hours, just watching. When I finally got the courage to look, it tilted its head and I heard it say, "Protect the children. The bridge is not safe."
I saw it perched on the Silver Bridge itself last week. It was examining the support cables like it was looking for something.
My husband thinks I'm losing my mind, but I know what I saw, and I know what it told me. December 15th, that's when it's going to happen.
December 15th was less than 3 weeks away. Marcus looked around the room at these ordinary people. A librarian, a mechanic, a grocery store clerk, all united by their encounters with something that defied explanation.
Has anyone contacted the authorities about the bridge?
We tried. The police think we're all suffering from mass hysteria. The Bridge Inspection Department says the Silver Bridge is perfectly safe.
But what if we're wrong? What if we're just a bunch of scared people seeing things that aren't there?
Then we look foolish. But if we're right and we do nothing?
As the meeting ended, Marcus realized he was facing an impossible choice. He could dismiss these people as delusional, or he could consider the possibility that something supernatural was trying to prevent a tragedy. Marcus spent the next week researching the Silver Bridge's history. Built in 1928, the suspension bridge was a marvel of engineering for its time. But it was also showing its age. The bridge carried far more traffic than it was designed for, and recent inspections had noted some concerning stress patterns in the support cables. In the basement archives of the Point Pleasant Library, Marcus discovered something that made his blood run cold. Every 50 years, dating back to 1878, there had been reports of a winged creature appearing in the Ohio Valley. And every time, those sightings preceded a major disaster. (1878), sightings of a winged demon, followed by the collapse of the Ashtabula Bridge, killing 92 people. 1928, reports of a flying monster preceded the Great Flood that destroyed half of Point Pleasant. 1968 was approaching, and the pattern was holding.
Marcus Chen.
Mr. Chen, my name is Dr. Elizabeth Hayes. I'm a parapsychologist at West Virginia University. I've been following your articles about the creature sightings, and I believe I can help.
Help how, Dr. Hayes?
I've been studying similar phenomena for 20 years. What you're describing isn't just a cryptid, it's what we call a harbinger entity. A being that appears before major disasters, trying to warn people.
Dr. Hayes arrived in Point Pleasant the next day, bringing with her electromagnetic field detectors, infrared cameras, and a theory that challenged everything Marcus thought he knew about reality.
The creature you've documented appears to exist partially outside our normal space-time continuum. It can see events that haven't happened yet, and it's compelled to try to prevent them.
That's impossible. You're talking about time travel.
Not time travel, temporal awareness. Some entities exist in multiple time streams simultaneously. They experience past, present, and future as one continuous moment.
That night, Dr. Hayes and Marcus returned to the McClintock Wildlife Management Area, hoping to make contact with the Mothman. They set up sophisticated monitoring equipment and waited. At 2:17 a.m., every piece of electronic equipment began malfunctioning simultaneously. The electromagnetic field detectors went haywire, the infrared cameras showed massive heat signatures, and the audio equipment picked up subsonic frequencies that made both researchers feel nauseous. The Mothman materialized not 50 feet from their position. But this time it wasn't alone. Marcus counted at least 3 separate entities, each standing motionless among the trees, their red eyes glowing like coals in the darkness.
They're communicating. The electromagnetic fluctuations, their patterns, language.
What are they saying?
I don't know, but the frequency is increasing. Whatever they're trying to warn us about, it's getting closer.
The creatures began to move in perfect synchronization. Their wings spread wide, their heads tilted toward the sky. Then, as one, they turned to look directly at Marcus and Dr. Hayes. The largest of the three creatures stepped forward, its red eyes boring into Marcus's soul. When it spoke, its voice bypassed his ears entirely, appearing directly in his mind.
The bridge will fall in 7 days. At 5:04 p.m., 46 souls will perish unless you act.
How do I stop it?
You cannot stop it. You could only save those who will listen. The bridge has been dying for years. December 15th is when it will finally surrender to gravity.
The creatures launched themselves into the air, circling once before disappearing into the night sky. Marcus and Dr. Hayes sat in stunned silence, their equipment still registering impossible readings.
Marcus, we have to warn people. If that thing is right about the date and time.
Who's going to believe us? We're talking about evacuating a bridge based on the word of a cryptid?
Then we don't mention the creature. We find another way.
The next morning, Marcus called in every favor he had with city officials, engineers, and safety inspectors. He begged them to close the Silver Bridge for emergency inspections. But without concrete evidence of structural failure, no one would listen.
Marcus, I understand your concerns, but we can't shut down the main artery between West Virginia and Ohio based on a hunch. The economic impact would be enormous.
What about the human impact, if I'm right?
If you have evidence of structural problems, present it. Otherwise, the bridge stays open.
With 6 days left before the predicted disaster, Marcus made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his life. He would have to take matters into his own hands. December 14th, 1966, 24 hours before the Mothman'S predicted disaster. Marcus had spent the week trying to convince anyone who would listen to avoid the Silver Bridge on December 15th. Some people took him seriously. The members of Linda Morgan's support group, a few friends, his own family. But most dismissed him as another casualty of the Mothman hysteria that had gripped Point Pleasant. Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at the photograph he'd taken of the Mothman a year ago. In the morning light, it looked different somehow. Less monstrous, more tragic. He began to understand that the creature wasn't a harbinger of doom, but a guardian trying desperately to prevent it. That evening, Marcus received an unexpected visitor. Linda Morgan stood on his doorstep, her face pale with fear.
Marcus, it's happening again. The Mothman, it's been appearing to people all over town. The warnings are getting more urgent.
What kind of warnings?
Specific ones. Times, locations, even names. It told Sarah Jenkins not to let her husband drive across the bridge after 4 p.m. tomorrow. It warned the Millers to keep their children home from school.
As Linda spoke, Marcus noticed something strange. The electromagnetic interference that always accompanied Mothman's sightings was affecting his house. The lights flickered, the radio produced static, and his phone emitted a low buzzing sound.
Linda, I think we're about to have another visitation.
The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees in seconds. Through the window, Marcus could see a massive shadow moving across his backyard. The Mothman had come to deliver its final warning. This time, the creature didn't remain outside. With a sound like breaking glass, it passed through the window as if it were made of air. Standing in Marcus's living room, the Mothman was even more imposing than before. Its red eyes burned with desperate urgency.
Tomorrow, 5:04 p.m., the eye bar in the North Tower will fail. The bridge will collapse in 13 seconds. You have done what you could. Now you must choose.
Choose what?
Save yourself, or try to save others. You cannot do both.
The creature moved closer, its massive form filling the small room. When it spoke again, its mental voice carried a weight of terrible knowledge.
I have seen this moment 1,000 times across 1,000 timelines. In most, you choose to save yourself. In a few, you choose to save others. Only you can decide which timeline becomes reality.
Marcus, what's it saying?
It's telling me that tomorrow I'll have to choose between my own life and the lives of strangers.
The Mothman extended one of its wings toward Marcus, and suddenly he could see what the creature saw. Not just the present, but multiple possible futures branching out like a tree. In one timeline, Marcus stayed home on December 15th, safe in his house while the bridge collapsed. In another, he stood on the bridge at 5:04 p.m., warning people to get back just as the structure began to fail. In that timeline, he saved 12 lives, but lost his own.
The choice is yours, Marcus Chen. But know this, whatever you decide, it will echo through time. The people you save will have children, grandchildren. The ripples of your choice will spread far beyond tomorrow.
The Mothman stepped back, its red eyes dimming slightly. For the first time, Marcus sensed something almost human in the creature's bearing. Exhaustion, perhaps, or sadness.
I have done what I could. I have warned who I could. The rest is up to you.
The creature passed back through the window, leaving behind only a faint scent of ozone and the memory of terrible knowledge. Marcus and Linda stood in silence, processing what they had experienced.
What are you going to do?
I don't know, but I have until 5:04 p.m. tomorrow to decide.
Marcus didn't sleep that night. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at the photograph he'd taken of the Mothman a year ago. In the morning light, it looked different somehow. Less monstrous, more tragic. He began to understand that the creature wasn't a harbinger of doom, but a guardian trying desperately to prevent it. December 15th, 1966. The day dawned gray and cold, with a thin layer of ice covering the roads. Marcus spent the morning making phone calls, trying one last time to convince people to avoid the Silver Bridge. Some listened, many did not. At 4:30 p.m., Marcus made his decision. He grabbed his camera and drove toward the Silver Bridge, knowing he might not return home that evening. As he approached the bridge, he could see the usual rush-hour traffic beginning to build. At 5 p.m., Marcus parked his car at the bridge entrance and walked onto the span. The wind was picking up, and he could feel the bridge swaying slightly under the weight of traffic. He positioned himself at the center of the bridge, camera ready, waiting for the Mothman's final prediction to come true. At 5:04 p.m. exactly, Marcus heard a sound that would haunt him for the rest of his life. The sharp crack of metal failing under stress. The eye bar in the north tower had snapped, just as the Mothman had predicted. "Get back!" Marcus shouted at the top of his lungs. "The bridge is collapsing! Get back!" For 13 seconds, the bridge held. 13 seconds during which Marcus ran along the span, pushing people back toward safety, shouting warnings that saved lives. Then, with a sound like the world ending, the Silver Bridge collapsed into the Ohio River. The Silver Bridge disaster of December 15th, 1966, officially claimed 46 lives, exactly the number the Mothman had predicted. But thanks to Marcus Chen's warnings, it could have been much worse. Traffic was lighter than usual that evening, and many people had chosen alternate routes based on the strange warnings they'd received. Marcus survived the collapse, pulled from the icy waters of the Ohio River by Coast Guard divers. He spent 3 days in the hospital, suffering from hypothermia and a broken leg. But he was alive, and more importantly, he had proof that the Mothman's warnings were real. Dr. Elizabeth Hayes was one of his first visitors. She sat beside his hospital bed, holding a stack of newspapers from around the country.
"Marcus, you've become famous. Every paper in America is running your story about the Mothman's warnings. Some are calling you a hero. Others are calling you a fraud.
What do you think?
I think you encountered something beyond our current understanding of reality. Something that exists outside normal time and space. Something that tried to prevent a tragedy."
The investigation into the bridge collapse revealed that the eye bar failure was due to a tiny flaw in the metal, a flaw that had existed since the bridge's construction in 1928. No human inspector could have detected it, but somehow the Mothman had known exactly when it would fail.
Marcus, how are you feeling?
Like I've been hit by a truck, but I'm alive. Are the others? The support group?
We're all fine. Every single person who listened to the warnings survived. And Marcus, there's something else. The sightings have stopped. Completely. It's like the Mothman disappeared the moment the bridge collapsed.
Marcus realized that the Mothman had accomplished its mission. The disaster had occurred, but the warnings had minimized the loss of life. The creature had done everything it could to help, and now it was gone.
Mr. Chen, I'm Jim Morrison from the Washington Post. I'd like to ask you about your experiences with this creature. Do you really believe it was trying to help people?
I don't believe it was trying to help, Mr. Morrison. I know it was. The Mothman wasn't a monster. It was a guardian, something that exists outside our normal understanding of time, trying to prevent tragedies before they happen.
But why Point Pleasant? Why the Silver Bridge?
I don't know. Maybe it appears wherever and whenever it's needed most. Maybe there are others like it, watching over other communities, other bridges, other potential disasters.
Over the following weeks, Marcus received hundreds of letters from people around the world who claimed to have encountered similar creatures. A bus driver in Seattle who saw a winged figure before a tunnel collapse. A teacher in Tokyo who dreamed of earthquakes after seeing red eyes in the sky. A fisherman in Maine who was warned away from a pier that collapsed the next day. Marcus began to compile these accounts into a book, documenting what he came to believe was a network of guardian entities watching over humanity. But he never saw the Mothman again. Point Pleasant's guardian had finished its work. One year later, Marcus returned to the McClintock Wildlife Management Area, where he'd first encountered the creature. The place felt different now. Peaceful, almost serene. As he stood in the field where the Mothman had first appeared, Marcus noticed something carved into the bark of a large oak tree. The carving was simple, but unmistakable. The outline of a figure with spread wings, surrounded by symbols that seemed to shift and change when he wasn't looking directly at them. Below the figure, carved in perfectly straight lines, was a message. Watchers eternal, guardians unseen, when darkness rises, light intervenes. As Marcus traced the symbols with his finger, he felt a familiar electromagnetic sensation. The air around him shimmered, and for just a moment he could have sworn he saw red eyes watching him from the tree line. Not threatening, but protective. Grateful. Marcus drove back to Point Pleasant, where a new bridge was already under construction. Life was returning to normal, but the memory of the Mothman's warnings remained. The creature had taught the town an important lesson. Sometimes the most frightening things in the world are trying to help us. The Mothman of Point Pleasant was never seen again after the bridge collapse. But Marcus Chen never stopped believing that somewhere, in the spaces between what we know and what we fear, guardians watch over us. They appear when we need them most, warn us when we're willing to listen, and disappear when their work is done. And sometimes, late at night, when the phone rings at exactly 5:04 p.m., Marcus wonders if it's another warning, another guardian trying to save lives. He always answers, just in case. That concludes tonight's tale from Chrono Tales. The Mothman of Point Pleasant reminds us that the line between monster and guardian is often thinner than we think. Sometimes, the things that frighten us most are the things trying hardest to protect us. Thank you for joining me in the darkness between worlds. Remember, when something seems too strange to be true, consider the possibility that it's too important to be false. Until next time, keep your eyes on the sky and your heart open to impossible truths.